everybody. I wanted to take some time and show you 3 dry mix seasoning mixtures that I use pretty often, and so I wanted to put them together for you. Some of these will basically change everything about what you do. Like, we're going to do 3 different ones. Like I said, first is going to be taco seasoning mix, a ranch dressing mix, and my pumpkin pie spice. All 3 of these, I typically, especially with the taco seasoning and the pumpkin pie spice, I do not buy in the store anymore. I make my own, and the reason being is they just taste different. Especially the taco seasoning. My kids, I have switched, every now and then I'll grab a packet, and they just, out of the store, and they just don't like it. So this particular taco seasoning mix, we're going to go ahead and do it first. I mix it as I need it. I do not put it in a jar and put it up, but you probably could. I'm sure you could. I just don't. And I use it all the time. Anytime I need a taco seasoning, I don't care what recipe's for, this is what I use. Every ingredient, you should be able to find it in the store. The first thing you need is a tablespoon of chili powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of oregano, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 2 teaspoons of cumin. I grabbed the wrong measuring spoon. So we need to do 1 teaspoon, that's 1 1/2, and there's 2. And the last thing would be a teaspoon of kosher salt. Now you would take this mixture and it will season 1 pound of ground beef, and you put it in the ground beef. I would not drain it. I've learned my lesson with that. It's just better to keep the fat still in the pan with the meat. Put the seasoning mix in, add 3/4 cup of water, and you will cook that until it's bubbly, which it only takes a few minutes, 10 minutes or less, and then you drain it, and it's perfection. Y'all are gonna love it. I'm sure it's gonna change your life. Okay, let's move on to our next seasoning mixture. Our next seasoning mixture is my ranch dressing mix. Now, you have seen me a few times in some of my recipes use this. So, and also, side note, I'm gonna put all the recipes down below. I was gonna just link them like I always do, but this time I'm gonna actually post the recipes. That way you have them right there. You don't have to go to another website to get those. All right, one thing, very important. Let's see if you can see this. Buttermilk powder. It's important. You need it as your base. Now, even though I say that, I have used powdered milk. This really finely ground as a base. It will work. It's not going to be as robust as it would be, but it'll work. So in a pinch, you could do that. I had to do that during, the past few years when we couldn't find many things. You can find buttermilk powder at Walmart usually, but the past few years, it's just getting harder and harder to come by. So I bought this off of Amazon, and yeah, it's not exactly cheap, but it does last a while. So, all right, let me see. I'm not sure if it's gonna fit. All right, you're probably gonna have to use a 1/4 cup measure on this, even though it's supposed to be a 1/2 cup. Well, I'm gonna have to because of the jar that I'm gonna store it in. So I need a 1/2 cup of buttermilk powder. Okay, that's a 1/4. And no, these are not like strict measurements. If it's a teeny bit over, it's not a big deal. Okay. You need a tablespoon of dry parsley, and these are using all dry ingredients. And you can let me try to get this open. You can try to You know, like I said, you don't have to put it in a jar and put it up and, you know, whatever. But some of this stuff, it is a little bit easier to do that with. This, in particular, the ranch dressing mix, will have to be stored in the fridge. And I just keep this little small jar mixed up in my fridge. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's get back to the recipe. You need a tablespoon of dry parsley. So a tablespoon of dry parsley. Like I said, it's not a, you know, real strict recipe. So just remember that. You need 2 teaspoons of dried dill weed. That's 1 teaspoon. And 2. A teaspoon of dried chives. And you can get those off of Amazon too, if you need to. Tablespoon of garlic powder. And a tablespoon of onion powder. And a teaspoon of, the recipe says sea salt, but you know I use kosher, so a teaspoon of that. And you need just a half a teaspoon of black pepper. So let me get that ready. I'm gonna try a teaspoon of black pepper. A half a teaspoon, I'm sorry. Now, you can mix it up in a bowl to begin with, or just put it in whatever container you're gonna use and use a fork to kind of just stir it around in there. And that's quite a bit of ranch dressing mix for a little while. So if you have to use, first of all, don't forget you got to store it in the fridge. Let's see what the measurements are, because I just, you know, do how I do. Like usually when I have to have a packet, a dry packet, like for my chicken chili, I have to use ranch seasoning pack. I just throw a couple tablespoons in there and go about my business. So I don't really pay any attention to that. But I am going to put below what you can do to mix this up into a dressing. That way, you know, you'll have that as well. You just use a 1/4 cup of this seasoning mix, a cup of mayonnaise, a half a cup of sour cream, and a half a cup of buttermilk, and you've got ranch dressing. So that is another one of my go-tos that I keep all the ingredients on hand so that I always have what I need for a recipe, because nowadays we put ranch powder in everything. So that's how I make that. Alright, so let me get this cleaned up and then I'll show you how to make the pumpkin pie spice. It's extremely simple. Pumpkin pie spice. I use this in anything that requires it, but my pumpkin muffins is my go-to. So let me get the recipe for that so that I'll give you the correct measurements. It's literally 4 ingredients. You should have no problem finding these. And I always, every year, mix up a bunch and store it just in a little glass jar and stick it in my spice cabinet. So I'm gonna just mix up one little serving of this, or one little batch from the recipe, and then, you know, what I typically do is I just mix up tons and tons and tons and tons of the recipe and then put it in the jar. All right, so you need a teaspoon of ground cinnamon,